think we shall begin, and I'm sure there'll be some more joiners. But I've got a little piece of paper in front of me saying, with the top line of it says, welcome to everybody. Even if you're not subscribed members of the Society, you're very welcome anyway to join this initial really Zoom meeting for the Society. What is it, about just under a dozen of us at the moment. I'm sure there'll be some other latecomers. For those of you who don't know, it's about the Society. We're just a group of people, a formal group of society. It's a society with a constitution who are really interested in connections within the landscape and the interpretation thereof and what it's really all about. And we're open to any understanding of that. So we're not tied down to any particular scientific or philosophical point of view. Hello, Christine.
Hi there.
Hi. Hi, you're there. Yes, well, you've just caught me in my introduction, but I don't think you've missed anything, really. If this inspires you, please do join the Society. We're moving over to an online form with a much smaller subscription, because we don't have to pay postage for an online subscription. But that'll all be published later, both on the website and in the paper newsletter for the existing members, if they want to change over. Which is a very easy way of doing it. I'll say thank you now to Pam for actually initially hosting this meeting, and she'll be doing the small talk afterwards. We've got a paper newsletter which comes out occasionally when there's something actually to present, and the next one should be in April, and that'll be covering a quite important occasion, because we're celebrating this year the anniversary of 100 years since Alfred Watkins first had his revelation, his first inspired understanding of what we now call lays and alignments on the landscape. About 5 years ago, we put up a stone at the point where he did it at Blackwooding Crossroads in Herefordshire, and for that occasion, because of all the little problems, I'm simply the Society, for which I will be representing it. We're simply going to present a garland to the stone and mark the day. There will be other groups attending, I'm sure. I know BSD, the Society of Dowsers, will be attending, and there are other groups who are interested. But as far as the Society is concerned, we will have a very low-key presentation of a garland to memorialize the 100 years, and that is the only thing that I'm going for. There will be a way for people to present their views, their comments, and the way to celebrate it at the time, even if they're not present, and that will be in the next newsletter, and we'll be announcing that later. It'll be a very simple occasion. What else have I got to tell you on this little note? That's really all I've got to do in the way of parish notices. I'm sure we can bring this up at the end of it, maybe during the discussion at the end of it. And well, have we gone? I've done that very, very quickly, much a minute faster than I expected. But I'll hand it over to Pam, and I'll let her introduce herself to do a little talk, so that we can and we'll have a final discussion at the end of the meeting, and we can certainly go and chat as well afterwards. So over to you, Pam.
Hi, everyone. And ask you to maybe mute yourself first so your phones don't go off. So this way, if we know a phone goes off, it's mine and I have no excuse. So let me share my screen here for a minute. Hang on. Let's just. I'm having there we go. There we go. Okay. So this talk is Divination, Who's Talking Now? And so I'm going to talk a little bit about not just the ideas or the mechanics of doing divination, but really the sort of what's really behind it. What do we think? How does divination work? And when we're divining, who's talking? Who's talking to us? Are we talking to ourselves, etc.? So a little bit of a definition of divination first. When I talk about divination, I'm including dowsing. As I assume most of us, everybody on this call probably knows what that is, so I'm not going to go into it. But also the sort of divination that one might do with tarot cards or tea leaves, any sort of altered consciousness when you're really trying to get into, insights about yourself or a situation from outside of your conscious mind. So this also includes things like looking for spiritual guidance, spiritual communication, fortune telling, or if we think about third G, when we're looking at divination from a ritual point of view of communication, this is really also a form of divination. So really, again, it's all about looking at how do we get extra information from things, and about kind of lifting the veil, if you would, to see where is, what is really happening? How am I getting the communication? What is the theory behind it all? So I'm going to go through in this talk a number of different theories. You might have other ones about how divination might work, and we can chat about that at the end. Or you may think some of the examples I'm giving are bogus. So we'll give it a go. So as part of as I was initially putting this talk together, I was thinking about organization. So I came up with this little graphic that will start kind of helping us put different ideas and theories around divination into place. So on one level of explanations are the sort of more die-hard science, physical sort of explanations. The sort of explanations, if someone asks you when you're dowsing and you have a coworker there, from your lab at business, the example that you might give him for really what's going on behind how does dowsing work. Now, on the other hand, on the other side of the spectrum, we have the camp of people who are more into the subjective experience, kind of a little bit more of your new age, woo-woo, fluffy unicorn people sort of explanation of kind of the airy-fairy. So, and you may feel more comfortable, with explanations about something fringy with them. So this little graphic is here to kind of give us a way of parsing some of these ideas out. So let's start. So one of the ideas when we talk about people of like what happens when we douse, what's happening with intuition. One explanation is, of course, that there really is no intuition. That what we call intuition is really more of a hyper awareness, the sort of mentalist activity that's popular in some of these we see on TV shows, more of a Sherlock Holmes, just understanding every little piece of really what's there. And an awareness, so maybe a sensitivity to a change in magnetism, a sensitivity to moisture that we're not even really conscious of. But that what we experience, what we pick up is really no more than what what's coming out of our own mind. Or if, and such an example says that when you're dowsing, it's really what you're dowsing is what you're intuitively, slightly maybe controlling that spectra, the pendulum, controlling the rods to kind of go where you want to go. And intuition itself really doesn't exist. Or another sort of scientific way is the whole psychological point. So if you're doing a divination, maybe say you're doing a card reading for someone using tarot, and suddenly, you know, you're picking up and you're able to tell them exactly what's bothering them. That it might not be intuitional, it may be the sort of connectiveness that we have with the collective unconscious. That if collective consciousness exists, certainly mass behavior exists. We've seen that in Washington this past year. In the collective unconsciousness, a sort of quiver in the force, if you would. And there's actually been groups that have attempted to measure the collective unconscious by looking at, I should have read down the name of the group that looks at the change in collective consciousness based upon these random number generators, as I seem to spike whenever there's something going to happen physically. So but that's still, it's a scientific thing. It says that, okay, there is something out there, and maybe we even pick up what's in our unconscious, going back to the first slide of a little bit of the behavior. There. Associated with the idea of collective unconscious is a pantheistic idea that really what's happening is that we're just all connected. And this is really kind of the view of natural philosophers, going back to the general view of people who looked at this idea, looked at why does divination work back like in the 19th century. And I found this great quote here that I liked. The natural philosophers believe that contemplating the natural world itself, that contemplation leads to a type of mystical experience where the soul expands beyond itself and comprehends the whole reality at once. And I really like that, but you know, so it's all connected. You know, that we're all just kind of naturally here. It's kind of like the Aborigines say that we're all earth stuff, and we share parts of DNA, we share molecules of air and that these things, we're connected to things because of actually being wired in our DNA. That so that there's part of us the same way that, similar way that birds may have a homing instinct, we have a homing instinct. We have a detection maybe of magnetism, of smells and that we're not even aware of. So it's all this idea that a oneness to the world. And we can take, now if one takes that a step further, that we're not just all physically connected, but that there is also energy that connects the whole world. The idea, the people used to talk about the idea of ethers in the beginning when shortly after the discovery of electricity, we thought, how does that move? Well, it moves to kind of this idea of an etheric plane, that ether being the fifth element, being this sort of unseen connective body that connects the whole earth itself. And of course, with this sort of etheric sort of work, one can think of the people have come up with this idea of earth chakras. I think that goes back to Robert Kuhn, talking about being places on the earth of different sort of levels of energy that picks up. And the whole earth chakra energy is an expansion of our own personal energy field. And that each of our own energy fields also connects to other people's energy fields and connects to the energy of the world as a whole. So again, it's a bit of a saying that what we're picking up is a sensory idea, a sort of sensory kind of quiver in the force, a sort of sensory way that we are hitting vibrational levels within ourselves or within each others, if we're doing divination or doing a sort of a psychic read with another person, or if we're doing, a reading on a place to understand or to locate where the energy force is. And this idea of energy force, of course, and ethers tying us all together is kind of the basic idea that works through radionics. And I don't know how many people here we've got people who are practitioners of radionics or not have studied it, but the radionics works. Well, some of the theories of how radionics works is that we have this sort of etheric connection between us and a sensitivity. So in the course of radionics, the sensitivity of just having a sense of somebody, a picture of somebody who you're trying to heal, and then maybe energy, something like, essential oils or some sort of energy stigma that, and dials can be sent through to send this sort of positive energy to the person. Very much the way that practitioners of magic might think about how sympathetic magic works. Now, we start moving away from this idea of just that we have a central energy that hits us all, that we are connected through the etheric plane. We go back to levels of consciousness that maybe instead of being outside, maybe it's all inside. It's part of the whole individual sense. So that when if I'm doing a reading, instead of thinking about that I'm connecting through the collective unconscious, is my higher self, the higher mind, that we have a higher mind that's more aware of what's going on, more aware of what is happening in the world around us, in the energy of the person we're working with. And it's this higher mind then kind of opens up and instructs us that we have a higher self, that there's part of us that hasn't been sullied or hasn't had its brain cells contaminated with alcohol or that isn't clouded by personal judgment. There's a higher point of ourself that brings information down, that helps guide us. So that when we're doing divination, it's really a higher level, our higher mind, that's instructing us. Now, a lot of thinkers, such as Rudolf Steiner or Helen Blavatsky, and like the American psychic Edgar Cayce, they talked that there was actually, conceptually a place where that stored all knowledge. And they called this the Akashic records. And Akasha is one of the Vedic terms for ether. So it worked that there was a way of collective energy, of collective knowledge, that by attaining higher and purer states of consciousness, one could actually read what was there in the, did I just lose you guys? There we go. There we go. That one could actually read what was happening in these records of past time or future time. And that is a way of learning about what has gone before. And that by one can actually see also what's in the future by going to these higher places of repositories of shared knowledge. And kind of along this line of going to that there was a place that holds all knowledge is the idea also that if one believes we have a soul, that we can start working and understanding things from a soul level. And this soul level of awareness connects with ourself, maybe from previous lives and previous incarnations, and has extended knowledge of what has happened, and maybe even has some future knowledge of what's being planned to happen in the beginning. That a lot of people, some people believe in reincarnation, believe that most of the people we run into in this life are people we've run into in other lives. So by contacting and looking at things from a soul level, one can bring a greater awareness to a problem at hand, especially as far as interpersonal conflicts, or when one is looking for using divination to sort out problems and issues. There's also idea that when we contact, when we were doing intuition, using intuition via dowsing or via like tarot cards, via the pendulum, that we're actually working with some sort of a spirit guide. And so that there are spirit guides, both human and non-human, who may be part of our selves, part of our conscious selves, but part of our helpers. And they actually give us the information we need. And through shamanic work, one can kind of cultivate more of this, more of the relationship with the personal spirit guides. I know when I had taken some of the workshops with Michael Harner, part of the main shaman journeys initially when you're working with shamanism, it's often to find a power animal and that can actually work as a guide for you and help you with information. And of course, some people's spirit guides as they work too are also human entities that can guide them. Not really that much different from an idea of a guardian angel. And we have this idea, there's this too, when we go out dowsing, I know many people look for, really also think about what are the spirits of this place? How do the spirits of the land, and actually doing prayers ahead of time to contact the spirit of the land, to, especially to find out information about what has happened before or since, or where is this mineral or that mineral? What were these stones used for? The Mayan shaman Humboldt's men would teach that one should actually talk to the trees. And he was a big one for kind of doing the tree hugging bit for as much as you could, but to put your hands on the trees and in a state of communion, you ask the tree what has happened there before, with the idea that trees share what's information that they have gained from the time that they have been a seed, which of course has come from an earlier tree, And as trees share the knowledge, know the knowledge of the place through their own heredity, and also there's been studies now about communication between trees, between plants via the root systems that go through, and the roots themselves and some of the microscopic organisms that connect them. But Humboldt's men would talk about that you could actually use the trees to go back into time and history and find out a place. I had done this a couple times, tried experiments with this when I was in Ohio. And it was quite amazing. Sometimes there was nothing, but there was one time the tree was telling me all about the tribes that had lived before on this mound site and about wars and that. So it's interesting. I've got friends who also talk about the Deva spirits, Devas being a similar concept to angels with the plants of that area. So there's like a using nature itself and the Deva spirits of the place and nature is another way that can help coordinate through the divination of a place. And of course, we talk about devas of a place, but devas in general. And here we're at the idea of spirit guides. We have guardian angels and angels on high, having this sort of general lookout for humanity and to aid us as we progress on our own personal journey. That because through using divination, and that we are essentially working with higher aspects of ourselves and communing with angels, communing with the spirits, lift us out of the mundane and into this sort of higher level of interaction with higher beings. When we look at higher beings, we're kind of back. This is a slide I showed before about kind of a general level of pantheism. There's also this sort of mystical pantheism, mystical thing of Gaia. The idea that we are all one, that intuition works, the divination works because there's really no separation, that the separation between me and the person I'm reading tarot cards for, or the separation between me and the trees, the me and the water current I'm looking for, this is all an artificial separation, that in the roots, we are all part of one big being, one mystical being that's having just a variety of experiences at the same time. But underneath it all, we are just all the same. So there's this wonderful quote from Plotinus. I read it in case you can't see here. The secret is, firstly, that this all is one universally comprehensive living being, encircling all living beings within it, and having one soul, one soul, which extends to all its members in the degree their participant memberships held by each one. And secondly, that every separate thing is really just an integral part of this all by belonging to the total material fabric, unrestrictedly part of a bodily membership, while in so all as all have some participation in the all. So that is kind of my brief run through some of the theories behind divination and dowsing, and open up for any sort of questions or comments. We'll get to the previous slide here.
You know, Pamela, I was just, where were you in Ohio when you were, do you recall? You were mentioning that you were getting something from a tree. You recall which mound?
I was in, I would, let me think a minute. I was in High Banks Park. And I believe High Banks is in Newark. I could be wrong, but I think it's in Newark, Ohio.
That's interesting because Alan and Linda were supposedly going to stop by last year before this. And one of the places I wanted to take them to was Ohio, which is about 10 hours from where I am. But Newark, even before, that was a place that I got a lot of energy from. That's interesting that you mentioned that. And I didn't have anything. I was just there and I walked around the huge enclosure and I didn't want to leave it. That's interesting that that's where that was for you too.
Yeah, so that enclosure there, that was the circle, there's the Great Circle.
Yes.
Yeah, it's hard to go in the Great Circle and not think about Avebury and some of our internal henges here, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But I think Newark is quite the magical place. I've been to a number of sites around there, but there's also, it was known for its rainbow flint. And
yes,
some of folks think that that's why you've got all of these really complex, the octagon mound and a lot of really complex structures in that area. But yeah, I enjoyed Newark. Yeah.
Yes, Pam. You've still got the screen up. Actually, this one by Martinez. It's just one point of interest. I wonder what you think about it. I mean, it talks about a comprehensive universal being. Does that sort of remove the likelihood of the survival of the individual within it? I mean, what space is there for the person when it becomes one universal consciousness?
Oh, from Plotinus, is that?
Yeah,
I think Plotinus would say that the goal was that the individual consciousness is just kind of an illusion. You know, it's how we work, how we operate, because we have a very narrow little world. But as our world becomes greater, our consciousness itself becomes greater and starts uniting and realizing that.
so
I think I know there's a Vedic term for this too.
We're just putting everything down to fate and limiting free will because it's all part of this one.
Yeah, I think that would. Yeah, I don't think Plotinus was big on free will, but I could be wrong there. Won't promise to be a scholar there at all. See, oh, we got a question here from Valerie. Says she's been reading tarot for 40 years. When I started, the person who introduced me to the tarot believed in Jungian archetypes. To begin with, I was focused on the spiritual dimension. And then I took this board took on board his view, and the tarot started to stop working for me. And eventually, when I accepted that there was something outside of me that was at work, the tarot started to work for me. And she has to say any comments on that. And yeah, I think I find that people that I find that that thinking that the control of the tarot is beyond us or beyond me, it helps us use, first, it's more humble than kind of the whole archetypical or analysis view. But I think almost if we think about it being external, it's easier to it's easier for the energy to flow. Now, if one believes that it's coming from the higher self, pretending that it's external, I still think is a beneficial thing with tarot, I would say. Does anyone else have any thoughts on that? Can you see the chat? I think the chat is to everyone here. Yep. I think analysis can be a problem for, a problem when it comes to trying to do dowsing or radionics, so you can think something and it starts getting in the way. And one starts worried about archetypes and sort of dissecting. I think dissecting the tarot. Yeah, I can see why that could be a problem. Anyone else speak up?
Serena, you
Serena?
have something
Oh.
to?
Yeah, I just thought I would share, because everything you were kind of speaking about, Pamela, resonated totally with me in the way I work. I've been dowsing probably, really since 2019 is when I got my first set of rods. And I've been I work in a very intuitive way. And I just thought, I'll tell you about an experience I had last summer when we'd sort of come out of lockdown. And it had been in a culmination of a sort of a 101-day exercise that I'd sort of undertaken during our lockdown, because we were allowed out for sort of daily exercise, and I have a daily exercise route. I live on the beach just opposite the sea in Hove in Sussex, and my daily exercise route would take me along the shore. So over 101 days I was sort of doing this practice, which evolved, and it culminated in me doing what's known as an utisetta, which in the Norse tradition, some of you may know this, it's sitting out on a barrow, on a burial mound overnight for inner knowledge and to ask and to work with the spirits of place. And I really felt my way into that. And I know when working with the land, it's always best to ask the land and the spirit, what I call the spirits of place, if they are willing to work with you. And then if the way I do that is working with the dowsing rods. So if I'm asking and I get what I consider to be the affirmation, then it's okay. So I had this, it was a very profound experience, and it was the first I'd never done this before. And I was working in an alignment with this place down at the sea that was kind of connecting right up to the South Downs, where it's a big national park, and we have a lot of Bronze Age burial mounds. And I found this particular one, which I felt a great affinity to, a fantastic place. And despite being outside a busy city, is really quite, it's not busy, it's quite isolated. And so I sort of said, and then I communicate what you were saying about trees, because I work with the spirit of the burial mound, and it was a she, and I got a lot of information from her. But then I was also working with a tree, an old oak tree, and that tree gave me a lot of information, and I built up to this overnight sit, and I did this overnight sit, and it was I had so much insight from it. And then when I completed the sit the following morning, because it was overnight, and I was stayed up over the whole night. I kind of maybe slept a little bit, but not really. It wasn't really sleeping, but I mean, it was a challenge for me to get through the whole night awake. But that whole experience then connected me into working with the ley lines of the spine of Albion. And some of you here will know that book about the Belenus line and the Ellen line, and they start on the Isle of Wight. And when I came out of this barrow sit, I'd never seen it so clearly. From where I was on the South Downs, I could see the Isle of Wight that morning, and what they call the nostrils, which are the cliffs on the Isle of Wight, which is said to be where the one of the this dragon line starts. So it felt a very magical experience, and that all came from a process of doing a daily practice that led to me having an insight to sitting out with the spirits of place, using my dowsing rods to lead me and guide me and ask questions and get affirmations, or say, no, don't do that, yes, do that. And then it opened up a whole other path to starting to track this key kind of twisting lay, they call them the dragon lines, up through the spine of Albion. And it's led me to so many adventures on working with the lands and working with dowsing. So, and I could go on, but I just wanted to say that sort of working with place, working with trees, already made a lot of sense to me from my own experience.
Thank you for that. What was that Norse term? Intersetten?
Utisetta.
Utisetta.
Yeah.
Can I just
Sorry?
make a comment about that? It's very. Thank you for mentioning the Isle of Wight, because that's where I come from. In point of fact, that's where I was brought up, and I spent my first 40 odd years on the Isle of Wight, and I can identify with what you were saying about well, I think you're describing the sense of place, and in fact, it was on the island that I first discovered the sense of place, because in my late teens, I had this desire to walk across the island and study all the barrows on the island. And the barrows you're talking about at the end of the Dragon is where I started at Head and Warren, which is way over Freshwater Way. It's literally over to the west side of the island. And I did have the desire, and somehow I managed it on a few shillings for the bus journeys to actually document and photograph most of the barrows on the island by going across the island. And this was before I even discovered or heard about things called leys. And it was just something I had to do. And it was really what introduced me to the whole subject of Earth mysteries, in point of fact. And yes, thank you. I can identify with what you're talking about, with the connection that we make to the land. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something we would, when I was in graduate school, in Madison, Wisconsin. The Madison, Wisconsin has a large number of animal effigy mounds on it. as does many of the parks in Madison. And we would go and sit on the Turtle Mound and try to, regress ourselves back to the to the people who had built it. I think it's something we need to do. Need to set. See if anyone else.
If I may ask a question, I just want to say I resonate very much with everything that you said and everyone else really. My journey has been over the last sort of 6 or 7 years, and I live on one of those energy points you talk about. So I know about the etheric web and the deities and stuff. But I'm interested to know from your discussions, how have you interacted with the First Nation people? Have they talked about the energy lines and stuff like that? Have you? Because we hear a story in the UK from what First Nation people have, like the Aborigines, etc. But we have I suppose, a certain story we hear about the Native Americans. But what we don't hear is about earth energies in relation to them. We talk about spirit and nature and their interaction, that level. But have you seen anything from their discussions there?
The tribes the First Nation tribe that I'm most familiar with are the people from like the Whole Chunk, which is a Sioux tribe. And they're in Wisconsin. And there's somewhat of a tradition. I'm not sure if it's the same thing of like the energy lines as we're used to thinking about them from like ley lines where energy goes from place to place to place. But there would be kind of living energy currents are talked about around some of the animal effigy mounds. Mm-hmm. So for example, and this is what this is kind of the area where I grew up in Wisconsin, and there were a number of these in the southeast. And sometimes you would hear the tribe talk, people from the tribes I've heard talk about how there is like the bear spirit or the water spirits covering and actually following the trail along some of these mounds.
Right.
Now,
okay.
One of the things like with the effigy mounds, there was never any burials, rarely any burials in these, although occasionally there might be some sort of like quartz or copper placed in like the animal's heart. But people are very, very cloaked about this stuff, you know, and a lot of the tribes, I know in Wisconsin, a lot of the tribes are buying back their sacred land, just so they don't have to deal with a lot of the kind of the cultural, distortion and diffusion that's happened to other tribes when they've let the power out.
Oh, okay, thank you. Because we lost a lot of our knowledge here when the Romans decided to come and join in and remove that sort of earth, nature, spirit engagement. So we're rediscovering a lot of it now.
Yeah, and I think these things I think we need to rediscover them here. I think there's a lot of that, and as well as in the States, people are kind of slowly kind of recognizing the power around some of these native sites. Occasionally you get people who are all about, they still barrel down and take mounds for parking lots and such.
Not a wise idea.
Yeah, it's but it varies from state to state. So some states, such as like Wisconsin, that still has a fairly large native population. So the sites are better preserved.
Yeah, no, I was in a car park last year and sensed that there were some stones and I needed to do something with them. But it took me about 6 months to actually go and walk over to them. And the next thing I knew that they were communicating to me because they were long barrow stones from the desecrated barrow that was in the field, and they were wanting me to rejoin it all back together again. And that was quite an amazing experience when that sort of thing happens.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you have that knowing that you need to go and have that connection, but you know, at the material human brain, you don't always put two and two together. But,
Humboldt's men used to talk about the need for site reactivation. And he would say, and while, you know, with him, it was often, you know, we're down there visiting the old Mayan sites, but he said, yes, it's the sort of thing we have to take back to wherever we live.
yes.
And when you feel this sort of calling, or even if you've just read that there should be something there and you're not intuitively getting it, getting or feeling anything, to just sit down there, do a little bit of prayer or meditation, and then if it feels right, you know, kind of come back again, even if you're intuitively not get there. And gradually this kind of I want to say the sacredness comes back, but it's almost like whatever sort of devas or energy that had been lost and, you know, it's just kind of lazy and not being worked for so long, they'll start to, you know, revigorate.
Yeah,
that we can reclaim these things. Yeah.
It's the words I get shown is reverence. So if we're showing reverence to these places, and quite often if I go to an ancient site, I'm asked to reconnect it to the crystal. The ancient crystalline grid is the terminology they show me. So that's what I do, and call them back to the energy node where I live. So it's fascinating. So no, everything you've just been talking about in your slides absolutely resonates with me. So thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm pleased I made it to the video tonight.
Glad to have you. Stop my share here. Oh, we've got another. Serena, do you want to read that or?
Yeah, I was just saying, I think it was somebody mentioned sort of Romans coming and kind of squashing our connection to the earth. Now, obviously, they took out the Druids because of what happened to Anglesey, but a lot of evidence shows that the Romanized Celtic tribes, especially in the south, because they were already trading with the Romans, so they effectively invited the Romans in. And in the Meon Valley, there's an incredible, it predates the Romans, so it's a Celtic Iron Age temple site, which is, archaeologists now know it to be the only known temple site to the goddess Epona that they found in the UK. And then, so it was already a site. Then the the Romanized community then continued, but built it into it had been an open air site, and they made it into an enclosed inner temple. But having worked on that site and dug there over 2 successive summers, the energy was very, very powerful, and you could really feel like a vortex. And then when you start, and when I was there and sort of saying, well, why would you choose this site to create a temple? And you could start to see, well, it's close to a river, so you would be making your votive offerings into the river. It was close to another big Iron Age hill fort that already had Bronze Age mounds on it, burial mounds. So you start to see where temple sites, why they are chosen within the landscape and what's special about that landscape. And the traditions carry on. So, okay, the Romans came, but a lot of the practices did still carry on. And then obviously places like Sussex and the Meon Valley, they were the very last, and the Isle of Wight were the very last to be Christianized. they were that when the Anglo-Saxons came in, they brought their pagan cultures, and they held out against Christianization longer than other parts of the country. So.
I think I didn't want to use that religion word, but I come from a mother of a history teacher, so I had it indoctrinated into me before the spiritual journey. So when I mention the Romans, I'm really talking about the later Romans and their change in their belief structure, because the original Romans absolutely worked with nature spirits and everything else. You look at their gods and goddesses, but later on with the religion influences,
When they became Christians, you mean?
Well, it wasn't all about Christians, because there's a lot of religions, a lot of viewpoints and everything else, but that's where things started to change. But yeah, I've just been helping, doing some work at a Roman temple complex that's down in the Forest of Dean. And you can see that going back 3,000 years. But you can see why the Romans adopted it. And where I live on top of a stone circle, but there's a Roman villa on the other side. Actually, it was a Roman palace. And that Roman palace was their White House, for want of a better word. And they put their White House next to the Celtic White House, which was this side. So it was all about power balance and communication. And ultimately, in the end, it was control. So that's where all these things go along. But it's fascinating when you start to peel back those layers and start to understand the history and how things migrated. And all this stuff that goes back to earth energies and nature spirits and stuff like that. It's fascinating.
I butt in here for a sec. Roman temples, the ones that I've visited seem to be on electromagnetic anomalies that enable communication. So if someone else is down the line from that temple on the energy line that it's on, you seem to be able to link into them. So that the Romans didn't kind of stamp everything out. They actually built temples around these very significant points. Whereas a lot of other energies I view as just leaks in energy lines. But the Roman temple ones are similar sort of thing, but they create a definite magnetic field, for lack of better description, which enables you to do specific things.
Now that's interesting, David. I have to, I wrote that one down so I remember it. Since I don't have to venture very, very far for some old Roman, couple Roman temple sites up here. Due to lockdown and.
Whereabouts are you?
I'm up in Newcastle.
Okay. So I'm down in Arundel, South Coast. And I've not actually visited that mound that Serena's talking about, but hopefully one day. I run the Sussex Dowsers. So yes, been dowsing down here for about 20 years.
Yeah, God.
Why has everybody disappeared from the pictures? Is that that their videos seem to have all gone? Is that for a reason?
I don't know what screen you switched. I can see you all at the moment, or those that have got the video on anyway.
Yeah, not everybody has video on.
Setting depends on the setting there.
They're hiding, so they don't have to say anything.
Yes, thank you, Christine, by the way, for the reference to Plotinus. I shall be looking at that.
Up your mute, Christine.
Could I just, can people hear me?
Yeah.
I think it was Paul that said that there was a kind of reconnecting to both the natural world and the energies within that. And I'd just like to flag up, and I don't know whether people have got any experience of this or have got any comments to make, but I participated in several ayahuasca ceremonies perhaps about 3 years ago, and I'm sort of delving into that world a little bit of Amazonian shamanism, and I think it's very interesting that obviously I think a lot of Westerners are involved in it because of the pretty lights you see with the effect of dimethyltryptamine on the central nervous system. But there are also a lot of people who are reconnecting with natural energies. Hunter-gatherer people, I mean, the amazing thing about hunter-gatherer people is that they don't see the human natural world dichotomy. They are the natural world. They're not in the slightest way separate from it. They don't objectify it. They probably don't even think about it. They are it. That's a path that I've tried dowsing, and I must say I spent 3 hours walking up and down a bloody field with absolutely nothing happening. So ayahuasca is perhaps a little bit of a shortcut for me into this. Okay, thank you.
If it's of any help or input, I also do healing, and I've come across a few people who've had the ayahuasca route and have actually dealt with the teacher plant involved, because one person actually had the teacher plant connected to him. What spirit or the universe shows me is to try and be more resonant to the environment that you're currently living in. So a lot of people who've come to me from a healing point of view of ayahuasca, they shouldn't have ever taken ayahuasca because they have no connection in any shape or form to the Americas. They should actually be connecting to the plants and the products in the vicinity or the environment that they've been brought up in, because that's where your body resonance and vibration is to the land and everything else. Because I wanted to go down the ayahuasca route, and the universe said, don't be so damn stupid. It won't work with you because this is who you are here in this country, not in the Americas. But you have to take it as your journey. But yeah, it's been an interesting eye-opener for me to understand that we actually have the same herbs and plants and capabilities in this country to do that. But when I was talking about the Romans taking out that sort of natural world layer, it's that knowledge that we lost. I know Romans built on our sites and all that element, and I absolutely understand that and the energies and things, but it's that book of knowledge that we lost. It's like losing the Library of Alexandria. They reckon we've lost 2,000 years of knowledge and capability because that burnt down. So yeah, it's a fascinating one. Yeah, someone put up the message, magic mushrooms, absolutely. But there's also, I think, loads of things I get shown, but I haven't had the courage to do any of them yet. One day.
Yeah, I think that with reference actually to something that Pam mentioned, there's somewhat of a dichotomy about using external means or chemical means, maybe of realizing the mystical experience. When you mention, Pam, the uncloudedness, when you want to be unclouded and the clarity required to achieve the mystical experience, I mean, that's basically obviously one of the fundamental tenets of the religious experience of Islam, is that you are unclouded. You do not go to prayer under any influence, so that you have to be that clear to go through it. I mean, are we saying that? Are we suggesting that the use of chemical input generates that clarity, or does it do something else? Does it generate an alternate mystical experience? I mean, are there different ones? How what's the big question? What is the mystical experience? Are there grades of it? Are there types? Do they lead in different directions? You can enjoy the mystical experiences. Yes, Eric, I think you are. I think you're still muted. You're waving. Are you there? You're there. Yeah, I can hear you.
Can I show you this book? It's very much what you're talking about. I suppose it's back to front now.
In the universe, about it, yeah.
The Hidden Universe by Anthony Peake.
Mhm.
Exactly what Pamela's been talking about there. The one thing it doesn't mention is dowsing. But I'm finding this very, very interesting. And I'd strongly recommend it. Another thing I'd like to point to is newsletter 62. That contains an article I wrote, which I think explains dowsing. My explanation for dowsing, anyway. There.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are we just as a corollary to that, and then possibly could asking the dowsers here, could dowsing be considered a mystical experience, or is it just a straightforward intuitive experience?
I gave a talk 2 months ago to about 80 or 90 dowsers across the UK on dowsing, and it's a talk that I gave last year as well. It's a very difficult one. It's a very subjective one. Looking at how dowsing works and why it works, and why for one person walking into a field, they know exactly where the water is and where they need to put the borehole, and someone else walking into a field won't get that, but they'll get the foundation of a monastery. You know, each person is unique to themselves in that sense, and depending where you are with dealing with your shadow, where you are on your journey, where you are with that clarity within parts of your body, let's say, everyone has the capability, but not everyone actually senses or even understands what makes it work. And I think the big question is, what is it? Is it that collective universe that's we're all tuning into, and depending on where we are on our journey, how sensitive we are as an aerial to that?
No.
Or it's something you're picking something else up. You know, you have a resonance within your body for the water because you are more water being. Your birth sign may be water, etc., etc. There was a lot to it from what I could find.
I think it's perfectly, it's purely physical. It's a feature of gravity. You know, you feel gravity.
Yeah.
You feel with the rods as well. You feel the effect of particles traveling which hit you. There's contact. You feel a stream of oh, sorry, microphone's not working. Is that better? Is that better?
Yeah, that's good. Go.
Better.
Yes. I was trying to say that it's physical. I rate it as being the same as gravity. As gravity pushes you down, it pushes you down, doesn't pull you down. You feel with your sensors in your body. You've got a whole range of sensors, cells, which can feel. And you actually feel the physical presence of flows of gravity.
Yep, that may be true for water, I would have thought, or an earth energy line. But when you're actually picking up, let's say, someone's life journey on the planet, and you're actually working out why they are feeling ill and what's happened, etc., etc., I think there must be something else as well as gravity, or there's different frequencies that you're tuning into, which is why some people are very good at healing, other people are very good at earth energies.
Something quite different. Yeah. I don't believe all that stuff about I joined a dowsing group, a local dowsing group, and the leader there would come along with his little pendulum and do 2 shakes of his pendulum and say, "Oh, you've got 7 angels on your shoulders." Absolute rubbish. I don't believe anything like that at all. It's purely physical, and your feelings are built into your senses.
Doesn't that depend on which end of dowsing you're playing at? So
Sorry?
if you're playing with earth energies, then you are getting like an energy shock as you walk through the different energies, which gives you an automatic reflex action, makes you twitch, and that the rods fly around. So that's kind of one end. But I had the misfortune of starting right up the other end, being able to see energy and see the energy disturbances inside of people. That wasn't kind of physical, that was a real seeing.
I've heard that said early on when I started dowsing that some people reckon they could see these energies and see colour.
Yes.
I've no evidence of it for myself.
So if you were to shut your eyes in a dark room, do you see nothing or do you see colours?
Yeah, you can drive your own picture. I can drive my own picture.
No, that's creating them. No, if you just look, then you're seeing these funny, strange colours.
Yeah.
And once you learn how to interpret them, you realise that you're actually seeing something real and you're seeing energy.
Well,
Yeah.
I'd put it down to blood flow in the local skin.
Yeah, no, I've heard all sorts of different explanations of what people have seen, but it is actually possible to tune into someone else's screen and talk about what they're seeing. So they might have their eyes shut and looking inside a tree, and you're looking inside of the tree as well, or you've got your hand on their shoulder and tuned into their screen, and you can both talk about the same picture.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, it's a definite ability that everybody has, but if they don't believe it, it won't work for them. So that's kind of another end of that's where I started, and then I had to go right back to the beginning, join the Sussex Dowsers, and learn how to play with the pendulum and rods to kind of explain my insanity.
Yeah.
Can I say
ahead,
something
Linda.
about dowsing?
Pardon?
I'd like to say something about dowsing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
David, Charman.
Hello.
I don't like the word play. I think dowsing is quite a serious business.
Well, if you take it too seriously, it doesn't work. So if you treat it as a game, which I did for many, many years, and it has to be enjoyable as well. Otherwise,
Oh,
what's
yeah.
the point?
Yes,
So,
but
so to
play
me,
means-
it was, I mean, I could get in the ring and play, you know, it's similar sort of thing. Needs to be taken seriously at one end, but if I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't have done it.
Okay, so your use of play, the word play is I've possibly taken too seriously. It isn't really
Yes,
a game, is
yes.
it? It is and can be quite a serious business, especially for those who are seeking something specific. And
yes, I
in
use
that
it for
case-
healing.
in that case, it is a lot to do with intention and questioning in order to find the correct answer.
And who are we questioning, you might ask? And of course, Pamela has just given us many examples of who we're questioning. And probably there's a little bit of everything in that. But in order to find what you want, one has to question carefully and somewhat seriously. But yes, do enjoy it, for heaven's sake. Otherwise, don't do it.
Yes.
Well, in association with this, can I just do a little plug for a future edition of our newsletter? Is that, I mean, Linda has actually read the thing. It's about somebody who could actually see alignment, see energy lines, a child. I mean, Linda actually has the article with her, I know. This is something for the future that you might be interested in at some point of time as of a 10-year-old boy who could actually see energy paths. But that's just a little taster for the moment, just a little teaser for you, I'm afraid.
So is the 10-year-old boy going to be talking?
It'll be someone who knew him. Yeah. He's.
Oh, okay, because that's kind of where I came in.
You have to wait until it comes out. I think that's the thing. So there's so much in the monograph that's been presented. I really couldn't go through it right now.
It's his stepson, I believe.
His stepson, is that right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
So how old is the lad now? Do we know?
Well, can I just answer that, Alan? I've read this, I think something like 18 pages of this A4 very tightly typed script, which is quite fascinating. And judging from the beginning of it, where he says Henry is 10 years old, given all his travels around this country, Malta, France, I can't remember the others, but more, he's either done it extremely quickly and before lockdown, in which case the boy must be much older than 10 now. And it was a question that came to my mind as I was reading it. I wonder how old Henry is now. But it is very much an interesting story and can be split up into many shorter stories to make it easier to digest, because there are so many aspects of it. I'm not explaining it very well because you have to read it to know what I'm talking about. And I can't let you do that. Alan will eventually.
Hopefully I'll be able to connect in.
Celebrating, I think. So.
It's just that when my son was 7, I discovered that when I was trying to learn to see the energy of a crystal, he came into the room and kind of went to town with it. He'd always been able to see energy and put me to shame. But he kind of got to the age where he was being influenced by friends at school, and then when he left into work, and his I don't think he lost the ability, but his want to be able to talk about it because it made him different disappeared. So he would still talk about it to me, but wouldn't talk about it to anybody else. And now he doesn't even practice it.
The innocence is lost to the world, David.
Well, same with everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Perhaps he'll come back to it one day.
I'm sure he will. Yes. Yes. When he realizes how useful the talent it is and has a need.
Perhaps the need's the key thing about it.
Yes. Well, I've been teaching dowsing for 20 years, and I find that people tend to kind of either fall into it, or they've had a need to investigate their situation further. So they've come along and want to learn how to use the pendulum or rods or cards or pictures or whichever method that suits them. And as Pamela was saying, there are loads of different ways of accessing the information. But generally speaking, I found that it has been a need for the person to investigate further for some reason or other. Me, it was just one of those moments. I got one of these perfectly clear pictures of someone else's heart. And when I spoke to him about it, it was confirmed to be absolutely accurate. So there I was, kind of, I had to, just had to learn more.
I once had a view of a fetus inside a womb, a flash. I can't even remember when it happened. And a couple of days later, my stepdaughter rang me to say she was pregnant.
Yes. Yes.
I suppose this is intuition.
Well,
Pamela, what do you think?
I would say it's intuition, yeah.
Uh-huh. David has got another idea.
Well, and I've often wondered what it is, but I deliberately look. So is that intuition or is that being nosy?
At the time, I wasn't even thinking about her. I'm sure it was just a flash. And I ask myself often when I get these flashes, I wonder what that's about. And I don't know, I say a couple of days, it might have been a week, I don't know, but it wasn't very long after that I had the phone call. I must say I was very pleased to hear it.
Were you with them when you had the intuition, or was it they were remote?
No, it would be more than likely as I was falling asleep, you know, that little time,
Right.
which we all have, and that's when I see things often. And this was a particular time as I was falling to sleep. I believe so anyway. It's a while ago now. I can't remember.
Have you ever been shown the image of the scan that would have been done to confirm the pregnancy or check the health of the baby?
I would have seen it, but I didn't put the two things together because the image was no longer clear in my mind.
Okay, I was wondering whether it might have been a seeing the image in real time came to you, or whether you actually saw the pregnancy.
Hard to know, isn't it?
Premonition. Yeah.
I thought premonition at first. That was my first thought. But I really don't know. It doesn't matter, does it? It's not important. It was interesting for me to happen.
Well, a lot of cultures, you know, believe that kind of soul-wise, and that we're connected, especially through our family lines. So since it was a relative, a descendant, it could even been something in the kind of that larger sort of family collective.
Yeah, but she was my stepdaughter, or she is my stepdaughter, but nevertheless, I was married to her father.
Yeah.
But her father adopted her. You following?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's still a connection, even though it's not necessarily
very much
blood.
so. And we do have a very strong connection. So yeah.
Kind of like, here I am, I'm here.
I know. And of course, the connection has grown stronger with the grandsons, of which there's two now, but that was the first one I saw.
Have you heard of the concept of chords?
Concept of chords? No.
Chords, C-O-R-D-S.
C-O-R-D-S. No, I don't think so.
From the healing methodologies that I've worked through and what the universe has shown me, we all have chords. We're like spaghetti in a lot of senses around it, and different different cords for different things to different energy points on our bodies and stuff. And
Mm.
quite often that's why the mother will know the daughter's in trouble or vice versa, no matter where they are in the universe or on the planet. And they
Yes.
know that in an instant. It's that cord that's giving you that connection. So just because they're not your birth connection, you'll still have the connection, and it'll be a stronger one because of the interrelationships.
Yeah.
And that's why in some regards, remote healing, you don't actually need the photograph or the details of the person or the house or anything else. As long as you've got the connection through the cords to get to the destination, you can get to the destination and you can do what you need to do.
I don't need the teddy bear then.
No. I've cleared houses before just because I've known the interrelationship connections to the house to get there. And you can do that. And it's fascinating when you understand cords and how they work.
Okay.
But yeah.
Thank you.
Not so good cords are the ones that make you feel drained when you're around somebody because they're putting cords into you and taking your energy away from you. Those are the cords you want to get rid of.
Yeah. Mm.
Taking that cord thing a little bit further, have you looked at NASA's website on, if you go onto the website and look up magnetic ropes, they are managing to image the cords that go through the stars and the planets. And they're saying they believe that they are responsible for their creation.
So we're getting onto the sort of subject of grids, effectively.
Not grids, cords. They give you pictures of these cords that they're imaging. And they're, not grids, they're definitely cords.
Oh, well, I'm definitely going to look into that because I've come across earth boards, for want of a better word, cables and things like that, galactic cables and stuff, when I've been dowsing and clearing land and place and stuff. They're fascinating. We have a pile of nettles here. I'd love to know if there is a ley from the nettles, because the nettles are in the shape of a heart, and it's just by a long barrow, and then there's also portals in the field. But when we had a group of dowsers there, they all found that it was what was called an earth anchor point. And 3 independent people came up with that, which was fascinating because I'd never come across one of those before. But there was a cord into the ground, into the nettles in the shape of a heart. And these nettles are about 40 foot across in the middle of the field. It's quite extraordinary.
Nettles tend to grow where the earth has been disturbed.
Yeah,
So
but this is in the
might have been some sort of what's temple there or something, or
No,
yeah.
there is a temple there, but the temple's on the other side of the road. It's actually one of the it's over a Ewley near Stroud, where I live, and the Roman temple complex there is one of the finest in the country. A lot of it's actually in the British Museum now. But yeah, that's in a different field. But there are obviously a lot of earth energy stuff going on up there. Otherwise, the Romans wouldn't have built the temple complex. I don't know if there was another complex underneath that, Celtic, but there's an Iron Age fort there, which is Ewley Hill Fort. And then you've got Camlong down, and then you've got Hetty Pegler's Tump, which is the Long Barrow, Ewley Long Barrow. But yeah, it's a fascinating area up there, but definitely a cord into the ground there. A whole group of dowsers that I took up there. We all found it. We weren't even expecting that.
And is it there constantly? A
Um,
lot of entities come and go.
when I've gone up there, it's been there. I'm happy to send anyone the details of it and the photographs because it's extraordinary. But that's again a case of driving down the road so many times and just getting the message in the head, you need to go to the nettles, Paul. You need to go to the nettles. And I'm, what the hell's all that about? And then you walk over to the nettles, and the next thing you know, you're feeling energy. And then the next day, you take your partner to make sure that you're not mad, and they feel the same. And then they walk in. You suddenly find these grass circles in the field, beautiful, perfect circles. And so it's a fascinating place. So yeah, you look up Ewley Berry or Long Barrow, Hetty Pegler's Tump. It's a fascinating place. I'll take you there, David, when I drag you over this neck of the woods.
Yeah. What I'm going to do is it's about 8:30 now. I'm going to call this official meeting to an end. I'll just once again I'll do a quick notice, just a reminder that the 30th of June is going to be a celebration of Alfred Watkins, and on behalf of the society we'll be laying a garland at the stone. There will be other groups going to celebrate it, but as far as the society is concerned, we will simply be celebrating it with a presentation of a garland, no matter what, hell or high water, to the stone that we erected a few years ago. There will be other people there, so please be aware of that. And I know that other groups are going to turn up, but and hopefully as many people as possible. And there will be facilities certainly for the society, for those who can't be there, and members of the society, to make a representation about it. So I'm going to call this meeting to an end. I'll leave it open for anybody who wants to chat.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Alan. Very interesting. Thank you, Pamela. Fascinating.
everybody.
Wonderful. Nice to see you.
Thank you very much. I have to go, but could you add some details in the Facebook event thread, how to join your group?
There is a little bit, but the best thing to do is probably to go to the website and navigate through there. There's a tab on there for membership and about the society, so
Okay.
do go there. But there is a lot to be updated because we're incorporating electronic subscription rather than a paper subscription. Instead, it makes life a lot easier for many people, but and that's certainly a lot, and it's going to be a lot cheaper, so it's because we don't have the postage. So we do have, obviously we still have the overheads, the licensing and the insurance and all that, running it as a society. But go to the website, maybe in a few weeks' time when we've got everything sort of updated there.
Hey,
I can
thank you.
confirm it all works because I did it this evening.
Bye-bye. Nice to meet you.
Thank
you, everybody.
Take care.
Bye, everybody. Nice to meet
Bye.
you all. Bye.